Streets of Rage, released in 1991, was Sega's attempt to capitalize the popularity of the street brawler games at the time. The game became a commercial and critical success as it sold 2.6 million copies worldwide in 1992. With the success of the game, it was only natural that Sega wanted to follow up with an even better sequel. The lead director of Streets of Rage, Oba Noriyoshi, once stated that he didn't expect the game to be a series. However, he always hoped that it would become a series. With the success of the first game, Streets of Rage indeed became a series as Oba wanted it to be. A year after the release of the game, Sega released a sequel called Streets of Rage 2. When we talk about the genre of beat 'em up, Streets of Rage 2 is always on the top. The game is not only considered as one of the best in the genre, but it is also considered as one of the greatest video games ever made. In most cases of a popular game franchise, the second game is usually its magnum opus. It is the entry that many considered as its best. The games that came after usually built on what they had from the first game. Other examples besides Sega's Streets of Rage 2 are Capcom's Street Fighter 2, Sega's Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Midway's Mortal Kombat 2, Capcom's Sengoku Basara 2 Heroes, and many more. In this video, we will cover everything about Streets of Rage 2. We will discuss on how Sega created one of the most beloved classics of all time and how they improved upon the first Streets of Rage game. From the development history to the gameplay, this video covers them all. So sit back and relax, ladies and gentlemen. We will take you back to the past to experience the 16-bit Sega masterpiece called Streets of Rage 2. On 1st of April 1990, Streets of Rage music composer and sound director Koshiro Yuzo founded his own company called Ancient Corporation. The company is a third-party organization for video game development. Koshiro established this company alongside with his mother, Koshiro Tomo, and his sister, Koshiro Ayano. In short, Ancient Corporation is a family company owned by the Koshiros. I mentioned in previous video that Koshiro's mother, Koshiro Tomo, was the main reason behind his talent for music. She taught Koshiro Yuzo how to play the piano at an early age of 3, thus establishing his career as an industry legend. Now, despite not being talked as often as Koshiro Yuzo, his younger sister, Koshiro Ayano, has a major contribution in the video game industry as well. Koshiro Ayano is a graphic designer and video game planner responsible for the overall design of Streets of Rage 2. Just like her brother, Ayano started her career in Nihon Falcom. According to an interview by Thomas Nickel from Time Extension, Ayano never actually had aspirations to work in the video game industry. It just came along because it interested her. She always had talent for art, and it so happened that the video game industry fits well with her talent. Another interesting fact about Koshiro Ayano is that she never went to art school or programming school. According to the Time Extension interview, Ayano had a passion for art because of her father. I found this very interesting because Koshiro Yuzo got his music talent from the mother, while Koshiro Ayano got her art talent from the father. Quite the family if you ask me. Ancient Corporation had another artist working for Streets of Rage 2, whom he would later become Koshiro Ayano's husband. The artist's name is Ariga Hitoshi. Ariga Hitoshi is a graphic designer and a freelance artist. He is famous for making illustration and cover art for the Mega Man series, in which he is also a longtime friend of Mega Man's designer Inafune Keiji. Ariga's most notable work in the video game industry is being the lead Pokemon designer for the Pokemon games Generation 6 and above. For Streets of Rage 2, Ariga serves as the object designer. Just an additional information, you can check Ariga's DeviantArt page to see some of his work. You can find the link in the description of this video. Other than Streets of Rage 2, Ancient Corporation has developed other games as a third-party company. Their works include ActRaiser 2 for the Super Nintendo, RoboTrek for the Super Nintendo, and Beyond Oasis for the Sega Mega Drive. Worth mentioning that Beyond Oasis, or Story of Thor in Japan, is a game where Koshiro Ayano considered as her definitive work. Unlike other games that she worked in, the mentioned title was purely a product of her and her brother's idea and not a sequel to an existing title. With Ancient Corporation working under Sega, how were they able to create a better sequel than the first game? Let's dive deeper in the development history of Streets of Rage 2. Under the Sega brand, Ancient Corporation served as the main developing force behind Streets of Rage 2. Koshiro Ayano acted as the lead designer, where she was in charge in graphics, characters, and combat mechanics. Koshiro Yuzo, once again, acted as the lead music and sound programmer. Koshiro Yuzo would also put some input in regards to the combat mechanics of the game. With the success of the first Streets of Rage game, the development team at Sega wanted to approach a different direction in the sequel. In the last video, we discussed that Streets of Rage had a more strategic approach in gameplay. According to the lead director, Oba Noriyoshi, they wanted to tone down the strategic elements for the second game and focused more on combat depth. In the Keith Stewart interview, Oba stated this: "In Bare Knuckle 2, the main feature was the increased range of moves, which we hope to enhance the sense of exhilaration. We had to cut down some of the strategic elements, but I think it was a success in its own way." To achieve this goal, the developers needed to have a reference game with good combat mechanics. That reference game was Street Fighter 2. The Koshiro siblings decided to buy an arcade cabinet of Street Fighter 2 and installed it in Ancient Corporation in order for them to study its combat mechanics. Koshiro Ayano was amazed on how the combat and the animation worked in that game, that she wanted to apply something similar for Streets of Rage 2. In the first game, characters are limited to only having normal attacks and a special police attack. In the second game, characters have normal attacks and different forms of special attack. This was something that Street Fighter 2 was known for, as every character has a variety of defining normal and special attacks. We will discuss how combat works a little deeper in a later chapter of this video. In order to have better combat mechanics, the game demanded better characters' animation. According to Koshiro Ayano, the biggest challenge during the development was not only applying fighting game mechanics in a beat-em-up game, but also making sure the animation can work in the Sega Mega Drive's limited hardware. As a result of wanting more in-depth combat mechanics, the visuals of Streets of Rage 2 had to be improved. According to an article in a UK magazine called Mean Machine Sega issue number 1, the game demanded better visuals to the point where Sega actually had to increase the Mega Drive cartridge specification. So, Streets of Rage 2 is a game that had helped improving the console's overall quality. When you compare Streets of Rage and Streets of Rage 2 side by side, you can observe the massive jump in quality. The latter has bigger sprites for characters, more vibrant colors, and smoother animation. As mentioned, this was indeed their goal to have a more combat-focused action game. With a different yet clear direction for the sequel, Sega was able to deliver a more refined product. In the next chapter, we will discuss the gameplay aspect of Streets of Rage 2 and how it became one of the most praised games of the genre until this day. As previously stated, the developers wanted to focus more on the style gameplay in combat for Streets of Rage 2, more so than the strategic gameplay of the first game. Therefore, this game has more moves that you can do for your playable characters. There is one mechanic that the game took away from the previous game. Streets of Rage 2 does not allow you to call police backup anymore, so you can't clean up enemies on screen easily with that move. This was removed because Koshiro Ayano thought it defeated the purpose of having more in-depth combat. In most beat-em-up games, specifically the ones from Capcom such as Final Fight, you are able to do 3 command inputs: jump, attack, and special. Similarly, there are 3 button commands as well for Streets of Rage 2. In replace of the special police attack, the A button is now a character-specific special attack. Meanwhile, the B and C buttons remain for the same commands: attack and jump respectively. Here lies the difference. In this game, The A button is not the only special attack command that you can do. There are 3 different special attacks. The first special is the defensive special attack that you perform by pressing the A button. This move allows you to swiftly knock down all the enemies around you. This move, however, only does medium damage. The second special is the offensive special attack that you perform by pressing the D-pad and the A button at the same time. This move allows you to damage enemies greater, but the attack only lands to enemies in front of you. Players need to be careful with this attack since it blindsides your character from behind. The third special is the only special attack that does not involve the A button. It's called the Blitz attack, and you perform this move by pressing front and the B button. This is very similar to the offensive special where you only attack enemies in front of you. This move, however, has your character dashing straight forward. Now, just like Capcom's Final Fight, the special attacks with the A button consume a small amount of health. The Blitz is the only special move that doesn't consume any health since it was performed by pressing the B button. A little additional fact that I found online. Axel's most iconic move in the game is his Blitz move that's referred to as Grand Upper. He shouts the name every time he does the Blitz attack. According to Koshiro Yuzo, the move is not called Grand Upper, it's actually called Ground Upper. Here's a video of Koshiro Yuzo explaining the name of the move taken straight from his X account.
Here I want to tell you something that I have been keeping a secret for a long time. I see many people on the net writing Grand Upper, G-R-A-N-D, Grand Upper. That's incorrect. Ground Upper is correct. You know what I mean? You see the back of the Axel's hand touches the ground when he hits an uppercut. Therefore, I named it Ground Upper, I guess. But we say that using Ground Upper is a world standard, so I don't want to correct that. But you guys should take this opportunity and remember this small trivia.
With more special attacks given per character, players have more possibilities of combos they can perform. This is what makes Streets of Rage 2 one of the more in-depth beat-em-up games at the time. The development team really did a good job on realizing their goal for a combat-focused brawler. In fact, this is the very reason why the game is the gold standard of the genre. Using Street Fighter 2 as a reference for combat did so much wonders for the game. Not only the developers achieved their goal for Streets of Rage 2, but also created a celebrated classic even after 30 years. The story of Streets of Rage 2 takes place a year after the first game. Mr. X and the Syndicate have returned to take back the city and take revenge on the 3 heroes of the first game. He has Adam Hunter captured, and he uses him to bait Axel Stone and Blaze Fielding to a trap. For the better explanation, let's read through the opening crawl.
1 year after the battle. The city that had been plagued with crime and violence was safe and peaceful. However, evil has once again cast its shadow over the city. Mr. X, the Syndicate boss believed destroyed by the 3 young vigilantes, has come back to life stronger than ever. Thirsty for revenge, he kidnaps Adam in an attempt to lure Axel and Blaze into a trap. Axel and Blaze set out to help their faithful companion, joined by Axel's friend, Max, a wrestler, and Adam's kid brother, Skate. They're determined to save Adam and put Mr. X out of action. 4 young friends, rage burning inside them, make a stand for friendship and peace.
From the get-go, Axel and Blaze are the 2 characters from the previous game that returned as playable characters. Adam, on the other hand, was kidnapped by Mr. X, thus not making his return as a playable character. According to an interview from shmuplations.com, it was Koshiro Ayano's suggestion to remove Adam from Streets of Rage 2. In her own words, she omitted Adam because he had no real specialty compared to the standard fighter Axel and the speedy fighter Blaze. She also thought that Adam was too similar to Axel. Despite Adam being the more power fighter in the first game, he was presented somewhat as a standard fighter as well. With the removal of Adam in the second game, Koshiro Ayano wanted to have two more characters that stand out in terms of technicality. Axel and Blaze act as the standard fighters with a balance of speed and power. Therefore, the two new characters introduced are speed dominant and power dominant individually. For the speed dominant character, we are introduced to Adam's younger brother, Skate Hunter. In the Japanese version, he is called Sammy. Skate is the super maneuverable, tricky style character. He is a small fighter with the weakest attacks in the game, but he makes up for it with his agility. He is also the only character in the roster who has the ability to run. For the power dominant character, we are introduced to a professional wrestler named Max Thunder. Max is the opposite of Skate. He is a large fighter with the most powerful attacks, but he is the slowest character in terms of moveset. Considering he is a professional wrestler, most of his moves revolves around grappling. An interesting story about Max is that he was a character pitched by Koshiro Yuzo. According to Koshiro Ayano, her brother loves grappler characters as he is also a big fan of Zangief from Street Fighter. There was one character that Koshiro Ayano wanted to be playable, but Sega didn't give the green light to her. Mr. X's bodyguard, Shiva, where you fight before the final boss, was originally meant to be a playable character in the Versus mode. According to the time extension interview, Koshiro Ayano had a really heated argument on the phone with Sega about wanting to have Shiva as a playable. She even said that she was crying on the phone. It's quite the interesting story behind the scenes between game developers and their publishers, if you ask me. With the story and characters explained for Streets of Rage 2, let's discuss the next best aspect of the game. The soundtracks of Streets of Rage 2 were primarily done by Koshiro Yuzo. However, there was another music composer at Ancient Corporation working on the soundtrack. The composer's name is Kawashima Motohiro, who is a longtime collaborator of Koshiro Yuzo. Both Koshiro and Kawashima would compose the soundtracks together as the series progressed. The music for this game has been considered as one of the greatest of all time. It is critically claimed as the best music for the Sega Mega Drive. To further emphasize this point, how about you listen to these tunes yourself? Streets of Rage 2 is still one of the best, if not the best beat 'em up game of all time. It is definitely one of the best video games for the Sega Mega Drive. The game was also responsible for technically improving the Sega Mega Drive as a console at the time. Streets of Rage 2 gained multiple accomplishments. The game sold around 3.5 million copies worldwide and earned an estimated gross revenue of $250 million in 1993. The game was a huge commercial and critical success. With the success of Streets of Rage 2, Sega would capitalize with another sequel in the next 2 years. The next entry is probably one of the most polarizing games in the Streets of Rage series. That is certainly a topic for another video. So that's it for this video, ladies and gentlemen, a trip down to memory lane on Streets of Rage 2. What are your thoughts on Streets of Rage 2? Have you ever played this game before? Do you think this is the best game in the genre? Let me know in the comment section below. With that being said, this is me, Profar. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up. If you dislike this video, give me a thumbs down. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, join the Profar Mokori Hunter X Discord server, and I'll see you guys in the next video.